So let's start by taking a look back at the last Grand Prix in Turkey. And the Turkish Grand Prix was, well, it was a very different race down to the track conditions, the wet weather, and the fact that nobody really had any grip. But something a lot of people probably picked up on towards the end of the race was just how damaging the track was to the cars. And with those conditions, for the length of the race, many of the cars coming into Parc Fermé at the end of the event had a lot of damage on them, lots of missing aerodynamic parts and lots of bits that have been beaten and battered off them throughout the course of the race. And that included eventual race winner Lewis Hamilton. Well, he didn't really care that his car was broken at the end of the race because he just won the World Championship. But just to show you how damaged the back end of his car was, check out the T-wing. This is the section to create the flow over the rear wing just as the teams want to. Look how it flexes down under load as the car goes down the straight. It's not meant to do that. Flexible bodywork is of course banned, but Mercedes didn't design that part to do it. It was quite simply broken. We don't quite know how Hamilton managed to break the T-wing on his car, but it was substantially broken. And it pushed down so far under load, as you can see there, it's dipping down and coming back up. When I first saw it, I actually messaged a friend and said, have Mercedes changed the T-wing in a pit stop? I don't think that's possible. But sure enough, it wasn't a different design, it was just a broken T-wing. Hamilton's teammate Valtteri Bottas would probably like to forget the Turkish Grand Prix. It cost him the World Championship, and for the second race in a row, damage to his car cost him aerodynamic performance. You'll remember the bit of Ferrari bodywork that got stuck in his barge boards in Imola. Well, it was a similar situation in Turkey, but though this time it wasn't an additional bit of bodywork on his car, it was a bit of bodywork missing. And it was only really noticed after the race, but this is where the damage happened. Second spin of the race involving a Renault for Bottas, and that little bit of contact with the Renault there damaged Bottas's right front end plate. It's fully intact in this shot, but what we didn't know at the time is there was some severe damage, and you can see that here. The foot plate on Bottas's end plate had fallen off some point after that event. And that really threw the balance of his Mercedes completely out. Those foot plates play an absolutely crucial role in the aerodynamic performance of the front wing. And the front wing, of course, is utterly crucial to the overall performance of the car, as we'll talk about a little bit in a moment. And that's perhaps why Bottas was having so many off-track and excursions and unplanned gyrations. It was quite fun watching Rosanna Tennant count up all of those spins in the post-race show. But as you can see here on the screen, what was missing is this big long footplate, that big curved bit of carbon fibre that you see there with the little kick-up on the back. Mercedes has spent a huge amount of time developing these, getting these the exact right shape, and it's so important to get that vortex coming off the rear wing, working its way around the front tyre. If that's missing, the car just won't work the way it should do. And particularly if it's only missing on one side, the car will suddenly become imbalanced and extraordinarily difficult to drive and probably quite easy to spin. So it wasn't Valtteri Bottas losing heart and the World Championship, it was him losing a bit of his front wing end plate, and that's what really caused him to have so many spins throughout the race and lose any chance of keeping his World Championship hopes alive, though really he wasn't going to win in the first place. A common expression you've probably heard in the English language is that first impressions really matter. And it's absolutely true of a Formula One car. The first impression the air gets of a Formula One car is, of course, the nose and the front wing. And another driver to apparently struggle with the performance of his front wing in the Turkish Grand Prix was Lance Stroll. After the Grand Prix had finished, Stroll had been struggling with tyre graining, front tyre graining all the way through the race. He didn't have the performance his teammate had, and after starting brilliantly in the event, he just fell back through the field and didn't get a particularly spectacular finish. The team, though, when Racing Point looked at the car in Parc Fermé, they claimed that they found one of the front wing strakes was damaged. Now, these are two sections that drop down from the main plane of the front wing. You can see them highlighted here. Those two sections go a long way back, and they're really effective vortex generators underneath the wing, really powerful part of the front wing. And if one of them got damaged, you really would start to struggle with the performance of your car. However, I took a look at some of the footage from later in the Turkish Grand Prix at Lance Stroll's car, and I noticed all four front wing strakes are in their position. So if that damage did occur, we haven't been able to find any footage of it. That's not to say it didn't, it just could mean that there was damage underneath the front wing, and the teams don't really like us taking too long a look at those parts because they're a little bit secret. Another high-profile driver who was suffering with his front wing, though this time it really definitely was the team's fault, was Max Verstappen. He really struggled for performance in the Turkish Grand Prix and was beaten by his teammate Alex Albon in an on-track battle, something we don't often see in the 2020 Formula One season. But it became apparent looking back at some of the footage and the photos after the race that something was very wrong with Verstappen's front wing. The team, before the race, normally adjust the front wing to have a really particular and specific angle. They use a little protractor to calculate the front element sitting at exactly the right point. But as you can see in this image, the elements on the right front of the car, the right-hand side of the front wing, are sitting up significantly higher than they are on the left. Now, we've exaggerated slightly with this line. As you can see, the line isn't quite square with the main plane of the front wing. That's just to give you the effect. But the team have actually admitted they made an error in the adjustment of the front wing, I believe on the starting grid when the conditions had changed slightly, and they set one side of the wing higher than the other, and that just made the car utterly undrivable, which makes Verstappen's performance in the race and the way he was battling really, really remarkable. So it's clear to see just how important that front wing performance is to the overall car aerodynamic performance. And that's why you're seeing a lot of teams still putting a lot of effort into the front wings of their cars, because that is information that can carry over to the 2021 season.